This is trying to kill you. And before you say this is clickbait, take a look at some of these pictures. The first time I ever saw this happen, my neighbor had come over to borrow my skid steer. He was ripping some bushes out of his front yard in front of his house, and he was using a chain behind his Suburban, and the chain broke loose. It hit his back door, and it caved the entire back door of his Suburban in about 8 inches. It was pretty lucky. I made a video recently on some tractor upgrades, and it got a lot of views. With a lot of views come a lot of opinions. While most of these come from a place of concern and good intentions, some of them get a little ridiculous. Most of the warnings on tractors, the stickers, the safety features, things like that, while they will keep you safer, come from a place where the manufacturer is trying to divulge their own liability. It's up to us to use good practices and common sense. So in all these comments I got, there were two that stood out, ones that got me thinking, and it's something I happen to know a bit about. I try to use a chain that will break before the tractor does. You may want to consider a lighter chain. Think of it as a fuse. Now, I don't really think the tractor has enough power to pull itself apart, but I do understand what he means. In theory, that's correct, but we're just a little bit off. We tend to get the biggest chain we can find and just send it. I'm as guilty of it as anybody. Aren't the bolts on the hooks supposed to shear before the links do? I think he's talking about these bolts here, possibly even this pin in the chain. As I was preparing to film this video, my buddy Lucas from Peaks Peak Hobby Homestead got his tractor stuck. It almost went into his pond. And he did what I would have done. He went for the strap first as a safer option, but then his strap broke. So logging chain it is. We hear stories like this and far worse every day. So what's a fella to do? If you watch the channel, you'll know Gavin is on here with me from time to time. And I know Gavin and his dad and some other friends because we like to go four-wheeling together. A big part of four-wheeling is getting stuck. Like to say, if you're not getting stuck, you're not doing it right. Or if you're Gavin, you break down and we have to pull you off the trailer. Regardless of the reason, recovery is an essential part of four-wheeling. For the most part, that's done with a winch, a tow rope of some sort, and shackles. In the last 10 years, we've seen a lot of products developed for the off-road industry to make things safer and more efficient. And I often wonder why you don't see that in the, tractor world, property maintenance world, like you do for off-roading. For the most part, for years and years and years, whether it's tractors, off-roading, whatever it is you're doing, when you need to get something unstuck, we go for a setup like this. We've got a chain and we've got a shackle. Or you have a hook mounted to the machine like we did on the tractor bucket. This has worked for a really long time. What I don't like is that this is all metal. So the industry started going to these nylon tow straps. You guys have all seen them. This is what my buddy Lucas used to get his tractor out. And this works really well. Definitely a safer alternative to this. But oftentimes what we see is this with this on the end. And when this cuts loose, it brings this with it, and it brings the heat. So this is a Kinetic rope and some soft shackles. What makes these nice is that this setup has no metal in it, obviously. And it's not to say that something like this going 200 feet per second towards your face is not gonna knock out a couple teeth. Which would you rather have? So maybe a hybrid system is right for you, I don't know. Here are kind of your options. We have a typical tow strap. This is very inexpensive. This one says 7,000 pounds. I call BS. I'm not sure exactly what this one is. I'll look it up and try and put it on the top. This is how a soft shackle works. It has a ball on one end and it has this loop. You loosen up the loop, slip it over the ball, and you pull. And you think that that wouldn't do it, but I'm telling you, you can pick up just about anything with this. And these little soft shackles are rated at like 20,000 pounds. They come with a sleeve over it to keep them from, rubbing and tearing if you're hooking it to something metal. But this is a much safer option. Let's talk about the difference between this Kinetic rope and a strap, because there is one. So this is a Kinetic rope, and these come in all different lengths and diameters. This is a pretty small one, because for what I'm doing, it works pretty good. The idea behind this is that it stretches and rebounds. If you've ever watched channels like Matt's Off-Road Recovery, these guys really wind these suckers up and they're yanking big RVs out with small vehicles. The idea is that it stretches and then it rebounds and it adds to the pulling force. This stores a lot of energy, don't get me wrong, But the difference here, if you try to do that with this, 100% of that force is hard stop when this strap comes taut. It can rip, it can break. I could break one of these pretty easy. And I don't think getting to that rating, you know, when you've got a little slack and you're yanking to try and get something out, that it's very hard. Something like this will stretch and rebound. And so the idea is not only is it stronger, but because of that stretch, it soaks up that initial shock. So you are not putting as much weight with the same pull on this as you are with this. And on top of it, it has a higher pulling capacity before it breaks. I think this is a much safer option. And when coupled with a soft shackle, these come with loops, this is the choice for me. Now you do have to be a little careful because obviously if you're gonna start rubbing this on metal and things like that, it's gonna cause a lot of problems. On the same note, you know, if you're like me and you care about your equipment, you don't want to booger everything up and scratch all the paint, this will never do it. So I try to make this my sacrificial fastener, if you will. Let this take all the hurt. These are not very expensive. They have the sleeve to protect it, and this should never actually touch anything. I've really had very little problems with them. I'm pretty happy in general. I want to show you one other piece. This is the one I keep in my truck. Obviously a lot fatter, a lot higher rating. I just keep it in one of these stuff bags, and I use this instead of a chain. So if I'm driving around, somebody's in the ditch in the snow, that's what we use to pull them out. I keep a couple soft shackles in the truck with it. Here's what I want to show you. This is a synthetic winch line, and I just have it wrapped around an extension cord holder. These come in a lot longer lengths, and you'll see these wrapped around a spool on a winch in the front of an off-road vehicle. I've got one on my Jeep. You see them on all the four-wheelers. They come in different lengths and different diameters. This one here, I think, has a 15,000 pound weight rating, which is crazy because that's, I mean, that's a ½ inch. These are extremely strong. They are designed to be, I'll call it static. So much like this chain, there is no stretch like there is in these kinetic ropes. But if you ever watch one of these break, which is rare, I mean, we have pulled some Jeeps out of mud holes that, you know, you're kind of winching, but when they break, they hold no energy, almost no energy, and they are designed to just fall right to the ground. It's really amazing to watch it happen. I like to use this if I've got a big, you know, top hanging in a tree and I'm gonna shoot my beanbag up there, and maybe I, you know, loop this back through. I've hooked it to the skid steer a million times and pulled those branches out of the top of a tree. You know, if you're ever in a situation where you are pulling someone out of the ditch, especially some of us going to Kentucky together and it's your own group, and somebody goes way off the road, this is 80 feet right here. I've got only 20 feet in this kinetic rope, but that gives me 100 feet to pull someone back up. I would have no problem hooking this to my big dually and yanking someone from the bottom of a ravine out, assuming the truck would do it. The truck would probably fail or at least lose traction before the winch line would break. So I don't think that you can replace a chain every time. And I think there's a place for this, especially if you're going slow, you're dragging logs through the woods, things where you're not giving a real hard yank, you know, low speed, things like that. For the most part, you know, you hook one of these up wrong and they just fall off on the ground and you leave it on the trail and have to go back and find it. But I do think there's a place for the rest of these, and each of them has a different job. So anyways, guys, I hope this was helpful. I'm going to make it my mission to use alternatives to metal whenever I can. Not 100% of the time, but I'll do what I can so that I stay safe, and I hope you will too. Thanks for watching.